Footsteps in the Hutong. Beijing changes every year. New towers, coffee chains, and glowing billboards. But the Hutong stay the same. Those narrow gray alleys between old courtyard houses still breathe in a rhythm of their own. At night, when the air smells faintly of coal smoke and the streetlights turn the bricks yellow, you can almost forget you're in a city of 20 million. That's why I liked walking there after work. I'd stay near my hotel in the Dongcheng district, plug in some lo-fi music, and let the alleys swallow me. The walls leaned in so close that I could touch both sides with my hands. Most doors were closed, painted red with brass studs, the kind that looked unchanged since the Qing dynasty. One night, early spring, still cold enough to see your breath, I took a wrong turn somewhere near Nanluguxiang. The main street was busy with tourists, but the moment I slipped into the side Hutong, the sound just disappeared. I remember how quiet it was. My footsteps echoed off the stone. Then, behind me, another pair began. At first, I thought someone else was walking the same way. The rhythm was steady. Heel, toe, about 2 seconds apart. Leather soles, sharp against the brick. Beijing has plenty of late-night wanderers. But in a hutong that narrow, you can usually see anyone behind you. I turned around. No one. The alley stretched out under a flickering lamp. I could see the cracked plaster, a parked bicycle, an open drain, but not a soul. I laughed to myself, probably an echo. The acoustics in those alleys can do weird things. Sound bounces around the corners. I kept walking. The footsteps started again. This time they were perfectly in sync with mine, like a shadow mimicking each step. When I stopped, they stopped. When I walked again, they followed, just half a beat behind. It was so precise, it started to feel deliberate. I turned around again. Still nothing. But that's when I saw it. On the wall next to me, a shadow. Long, slim legs, a body slightly hunched forward, wearing something that looked like a coat. Except the shadow didn't match mine. My hands were in my pockets. This one's arms hung by its sides, and it was standing about a meter behind me. There was no one there to cast it. I froze. The light came from a single yellow bulb hanging above an old door. Maybe the angle was weird. Maybe it was reflecting something from a rooftop. I tried stepping sideways. The shadow didn't move. Then I bolted. The hutong twisted left and right, narrow turns between high gray walls. I could hear my sneakers slapping the bricks. And that other sound, the click, click, click of leather heels, chasing me, but not speeding up. Always that same calm rhythm. When I turned another corner, the alley opened slightly, enough for moonlight to reach the ground. For a second, I thought I'd lost it. The sound stopped. I pressed myself against a wall, panting, listening. Nothing but the hum of a faraway streetlight. Then, at the next intersection, I saw movement. A shape, flat, black, like smoke, slid along the wall ahead of me and turned the corner first, smooth as if it knew the way. People say hutongs have memories. Locals tell stories about soldiers, servants, entire families erased during the Cultural Revolution, their spirits still walking the alleys. I don't really believe in that stuff, but that night, I started to. I followed the corner, slowly, this time. My hands were shaking so bad I could hear my jacket rustle. The alley beyond was empty, but straight in front of me, maybe 5 feet away, the shadow now stood on my wall, facing me, its head tilted slightly. I remember thinking how impossible it looked. 2 silhouettes on one wall, mine trembling in the yellow light, and the other completely still. Then the bulb overhead flickered and went out. Everything went black. In the dark, the sound returned. Step, step, step. Closer now. I fumbled for my phone, trying to use its flashlight, but my fingers wouldn't unlock the screen. Then something brushed my shoulder. Cold, dry, like static. I screamed, stumbled forward, and ran until the alley spat me out onto the main road. When I looked back, the Hutong mouth was pitch dark. But on the wall near the entrance, I saw it again for just a second. My own shadow. And another beside it, a little taller, standing perfectly still. The next morning I told the hotel clerk what happened. She gave me a polite smile, the kind people give tourists who've seen too many movies. Many foreigners get lost there, she said. The old places have old air. She looked around, lowered her voice, and added, "They say if a spirit dies alone, its shadow keeps walking. When it finds a living one, sometimes it follows home." I laughed it off, checked out, and flew back to Los Angeles that night. But here's the thing. A few days later, I noticed something strange. At sunset, the light in my apartment hits the wall near my kitchen. Every evening, my shadow appears there while I cook. Only now, there's two. The second one doesn't move when I do. I tried every explanation. Double window panes, reflections from the TV, anything. But the second shadow stays even when the lights are off. Sometimes I wake up at night and hear faint footsteps in the hallway, pacing slowly, patiently, like someone who knows every turn of a narrow alley halfway across the world. And when I finally build up the courage to check, the sound always stops just before I open the door. The floorboards are cold. The air smells faintly of coal, and on the wall, only the shadow, waiting. The temple bell. You know that kind of cold that feels almost clean? The kind that hits you in the mountains after sunset, when even the trees stop making noise. That's how it was when I reached the trailhead. The sign said something like Kannon-ji Ruins, an abandoned Buddhist temple up in the Nagano Mountains. Locals said it wasn't really abandoned, more like left alone. There were stories about people hearing a bell from up there at night, even though the monks had all died or left decades ago. It wasn't some urban legend thing either. Hikers actually reported it. 3 rings, clear as glass, always after midnight. I should have taken that as a warning, but it sounded too poetic to ignore. I started climbing just before dusk. The trail wound through cedar trees, the air heavy with that earthy smell of wet moss and old bark. There was a stone path at first, cracked and half swallowed by roots, but soon it turned to dirt. I had a flashlight, a thermos of tea, and no sense whatsoever. I think part of me just wanted some quiet. Tokyo had been driving me insane. Trains, crowds, neon. The constant hum of everything. Up here, there was nothing but the crunch of gravel under my boots and the wind sighing through the trees. By the time I saw the temple gate, the sun was gone. It wasn't a grand structure, just a simple wooden torii-style gate with the roof caved in and a few old paper charms still fluttering in the wind. I ducked through it, half expecting to feel something change, like stepping into another time. And maybe I did. The temple itself sat higher up the slope, half hidden behind tall grass. One side of the roof had collapsed, and the prayer hall's walls were dark with mold. But in the distance, past the main building, I saw it. The bell tower. A tall, thin wooden frame, with the bell itself still hanging, blackened with age. That's when I heard it for the first time. Gong. It wasn't loud. It was deep, slow, and pure, the kind of sound that doesn't hit your ears so much as your chest. The air vibrated with it. Then it came again. Gong. 2 times. The third one never came. I remember standing there trying to convince myself it was just wind. Metal expands and contracts. Maybe it made the bell move on its own. But I couldn't shake the feeling that it was intentional. Like someone had decided to ring it twice and was waiting to see who'd come. I followed the sound anyway. Around the main hall, the path curved into a courtyard. The moon was barely visible through the fog, but I saw movement. People. Maybe 10 of them, walking in a line. They wore dark robes, shaved heads reflecting the moonlight, hands pressed together as they chanted something under their breath. I thought, oh, monks, so the place isn't abandoned after all. But when they turned toward me, I saw their faces. Every one of them had their eyes wide open, completely white. No pupils, no color, just milk-white eyes staring at nothing. And they were still chanting. The sound of it didn't come from their mouths exactly. It was more like the air itself was doing it, vibrating through the trees, mixing with the low hum of the wind. I froze, holding my flashlight against my chest. Then, behind them, the bell rang again. Gong. The third time. It echoed so long I couldn't tell when it ended. When I blinked, the monks were gone. I don't remember running, but I must have. The next thing I knew, I was halfway down the mountain trail, my legs shaking so bad I could barely stand. Every sound felt like footsteps. Every gust of wind sounded like that bell again. When I finally reached my car, I didn't look back. I drove until I saw the lights of a small roadside inn and pulled over. The owner, an old man, looked surprised to see anyone that late. "You came from the mountain?" he asked. I nodded. I heard the bell. He froze. For a second, I thought he didn't understand my Japanese. Then he sighed. 3 times? I nodded again. He looked away, his expression changing, something between fear and pity. "You shouldn't have stayed that long," he said quietly. "The bell calls for prayers. It rings once, for the living, once for the lost, and once for those who will join them." He poured me tea, hands trembling slightly. In old days, monks would recite through the night, keeping their eyes open so they wouldn't fall asleep. They said closing them would let the spirits enter. He paused, looking out the window toward the dark ridgeline. No one goes up there now. Those who hear it 3 times never make it down. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I drove straight back toward the city. The mountain looked peaceful from a distance. Mist curling around the peaks, sunlight touching the treetops. Beautiful, really. But somewhere in that fog, I swear, I saw something glint. A faint shimmer of metal, swinging slowly back and forth. 2 weeks later, I got a message from the local hiking group I joined online. They'd gone looking for a missing man who'd been hiking in the same area. Said they found him kneeling under the temple's bell tower. Still, silent, eyes wide open, face turned up toward the sky. They said he looked like he was listening to something. And when they moved him, the bell rang once, just once, and then it stopped. The river lantern. They say the Yellow River never forgets. You can build a dam, dig a canal, even change its name on a map. But the river always remembers where it once flowed. It takes back what it wants, when it wants. I didn't really believe that kind of talk until I stayed in a little village along its banks, somewhere in Henan province. You won't find it on any tourist map. Just a few dozen houses, mud walls, dusty roads, and that brown water moving slow and wide under the moonlight. I'd gone there for a photography project. Something about rural traditions disappearing in modern China. I didn't realize one of those traditions was watching the dead sail by. The locals called them Deng Chuan. Deng Chuan. Light boats. Tiny lanterns that float down the river late at night, sometimes tied to wooden boards, sometimes drifting on their own. You'd think they were just offerings. Oh, like paper lanterns for the dead, right? That's what I thought too. Until I saw one. It was the middle of summer, thick humidity, the kind that makes your shirt stick to your back. Power had gone out in the whole village, so I took a walk down to the riverbank. The moon was high, soft yellow light on that muddy water. And there it was, a single light bobbing on the surface. At first I thought it was someone fishing. The light was steady, moving against the current, which didn't make sense. Then another light appeared behind it. Then another. 3, 4, 5. Drifting silently upstream, like the river was breathing them out one by one. I called out, "Hello?" No answer. Just the soft lap of water. Then one of the older villagers, a man who sold me noodles that morning, appeared beside me. He had a cigarette hanging from his lips, the smoke curling in the moonlight. "You shouldn't watch too long," he said in Mandarin, slow and careful. "The lights are not for you." He told me a story then, without looking at me once. A long time ago, the river flooded every spring. Whole families disappeared overnight, swallowed by the current. The villagers started sending lanterns downstream to guide their souls back. But one year, when they did it, the lights came back instead, floating upstream, quiet as breath. Since then, the lights weren't offerings anymore. They were warnings. "If you see the rope, you look away," he said. "The rope?" I asked. He tapped the side of his neck. "Under the light. Always under the light." That night I couldn't sleep. His words wouldn't leave my head. I kept picturing those floating lights, the way they swayed without wind. Around midnight, I gave in, grabbed my camera, slipped outside, and walked back toward the river. The air smelled like rain and dirt. Crickets were silent. Not even a dog barked. When I reached the bank, the river was still. Completely still. No waves, no wind. Just the reflection of the moon breaking on the surface. Then, softly, one light appeared again. It drifted toward me, the flame trembling inside a glass lantern. Another appeared beside it, then another. They stopped about 10 meters out, rocking gently on the water. I zoomed in with my camera, and that's when I saw it. Beneath the nearest lantern, something hung just below the surface, like a shadow, but solid. A shape. Human. It was upside down. The light from the lantern caught pale skin, wet hair fanning out underwater, arms hanging limp toward the sky. Around the ankles, thick coiled rope tied to the lantern's base. I dropped my camera. The sound must have startled the thing, or maybe it was just the current. But the body twitched. One arm drifted upward, fingers spreading, as if reaching for me. Then the flame flickered. The lantern tilted. The light went out. I ran. Didn't stop until I reached my room, slamming the door and locking it twice. I sat there for hours, listening for footsteps, for water dripping, for anything. When dawn finally came, I opened the door. The air smelled faintly of river mud. And there, hanging neatly across the wooden doorframe, was a length of wet rope. Not coiled, not random. Hung like someone had measured it. Drops of water still fell from it, darkening the floor. I didn't touch it. I just packed my bag, got in my rented van, and drove until I hit a highway. Back in the city, I tried to forget about it. Told myself it was exhaustion, bad lighting, hallucination, whatever. But a few days later, when I checked my camera, there were still shots from that night. The first few were fine. River, lanterns, reflections. Then one image, just before the one where I dropped out camera, the lantern's flame. The rope. And just under the surface, 2 pale hands, pressed flat against the water, reaching up. I sent the photo to the man from the village, using the number from his shop receipt. He didn't answer. 2 days later, a message came through. Delete it. The river remembers faces. I deleted the photo. But that night, when I turned off my apartment lights, I noticed a small reflection in the window, like a faint glow moving across glass. I thought it was a streetlight at first. Then I realized it was moving upstream. Slow, deliberate, and bright enough to show something hanging below it. I shut the curtains, turned on every light in the room, and stayed awake until morning. Now I don't go near rivers, not even bridges. And sometimes when I hear rain hitting the window at night, I swear I can smell wet rope. The hallway offering. You ever stay somewhere that feels like time just stopped? Like it's not haunted exactly, but every sound echoes too long. Every door looks the same, and even the air smells like it's been trapped there for decades. That's what the apartment block felt like. It was in Tokyo's outskirts, one of those old danshi, post-war public housing complexes built in the 60s. Concrete walls, narrow balconies, long outdoor hallways lined with identical doors. Cheap rent, thin walls, no elevators. My coworker said it was perfect for short-term stays. I moved in around late autumn. The air was dry, and the building creaked at night like it was remembering things. The first night was quiet, except for the flickering light in the hallway. One fluorescent tube, buzzing and dimming every few seconds. I remember thinking, great, another apartment with horror movie lighting. It was fine though, until around 2 a.m. That's when I heard footsteps outside my door. Slow ones. Slippers, maybe. Shh. Shh. They stopped right in front of my apartment. I waited, expecting a knock, or someone fumbling with keys. But there was nothing. Just silence. Then, something soft landed on the floor. The next morning, when I stepped out to leave for work, I saw it. An offering. A small plate with rice, a piece of fruit, and a single stick of incense burnt halfway down. At first, I figured it was some kind of local custom. Japanese people sometimes leave offerings for ancestors, right? Maybe someone got the wrong door. I asked the lady next door about it later that day. She was maybe in her 50s, polite but tired looking. When I mentioned the offering, her face changed, tight, cautious. She said, "Don't touch them. Just leave it. Even if it's in front of my door?" She nodded. "If you move it, they'll think it's for you." That didn't make sense, but her tone made me drop it. That night, the flickering light came back. Buzz. Click. Buzz. Click. It went on for hours, like someone breathing. 2 days later, there was another offering. Same plate, same rice, same faint smell of incense. I left it alone this time. But on the third night, curiosity won. I crouched near the peephole around midnight, lights off, waiting. Around 1:40 a.m., the footsteps came again. Slow, steady. When they reached my door, I held my breath. Through the peephole, I saw something. Just a shadow. Small, bent over like someone setting something down. I couldn't make out a face. The light flickered, and for a second I saw hands, thin and pale, moving too slowly, almost trembling. Then darkness. When the light steadied again, the hallway was empty. I opened the door. The offering was there, still warm. The next morning I noticed something new. At the end of the hallway, near the stairs, one of my neighbor's shoes was sitting alone. Just one shoe. Black leather. Scuffed. Clearly worn. It stayed there all day. The next night, the same neighbor's door was taped shut by police. I found out later from another tenant that the man had gone missing. Retired salaryman. Quiet. Polite. The cops said he never came home from his nightly walk, but someone swore they saw his lights on around midnight. Then I remembered what the woman next door said. If you move it, they'll think it's for you. That night when I came home, there was an offering again, right in front of my door. I didn't touch it, but I noticed the plate was different this time. The rice was uncooked, the incense wasn't lit, and the small orange on top had a bite mark in it. The flickering light seemed worse that night, buzzing louder, dimming longer each time, like it was struggling to stay alive. I couldn't sleep, so I stepped outside for some air. The hallway stretched long and empty under that weak light. Halfway down, I noticed every door had something in front of it. A small dish, a flower, sometimes a pair of chopsticks crossed on the floor. All except one. Mine. I turned around. Someone had placed shoes in front of my door. Just one pair. Wet. The light flickered out completely. When I woke up the next morning, the shoes were gone. I tried telling myself it was a prank, that someone was just trying to scare the foreigner. But then the police came again. This time they were looking for the woman next door. They said she disappeared sometime during the night. When they left, I noticed something hanging from her doorknob. A thin white paper tag, like the kind you see at shrines during Obon, the festival for the dead. The wind from the hallway made it spin slowly, whispering against the metal. That night, I packed my things. Before I left, I took one last photo of the hallway. The lights were still flickering, and in the photo, each door had something faintly glowing near it, even though I couldn't see anything when I took it. Later, when I zoomed in on the image, I realized the light wasn't coming from the floor. It was coming from inside the shoes. They tore the building down a year later. Locals said it was cursed, but officials called it unsafe structure damage. When I drive by the empty lot now, I still see the old concrete foundation. And sometimes, under the streetlight, a single shoe just sitting there, always wet. The Red Lantern. Every summer, Japan comes alive with festivals. Matsuri, they call them. Bright paper lanterns, food stalls selling grilled corn and sweet sake, drums echoing through narrow streets. It's the kind of beauty that feels timeless, where the whole village gathers under the night sky to forget about real life for a while. But not all lanterns are meant to shine. I was in a small village in Gifu Prefecture, staying with a friend's grandparents. They invited me to their annual festival, held in honor of the local kami, a mountain spirit said to protect the rice fields. It was simple, warm, exactly the kind of countryside nostalgia city people pay money to experience. The night of the festival, the main street was lined with red paper lanterns, swaying gently in the humid breeze. Children ran past with masks and candy, the air full of drum beats and laughter. And then, I noticed one lantern that didn't look like the others. It hung a little lower than the rest, near the edge of the shrine grounds. Most lanterns were bright crimson, with neat black calligraphy painted on them. This one was darker, red mixed with black soot, like it had been through a fire. I pointed it out to my friend's grandfather. He didn't even glance at it, just muttered, "Don't walk under that one." "Why not?" He looked at me then, expression flat, eyes sharp. "Just don't." Then he went back to pouring sake into small cups for the neighborhood elders. Later that evening, I saw a group of kids chasing each other near that same lantern. One boy ran straight beneath it, laughing, until he stopped. He froze in place, then started crying so suddenly and so hard it didn't sound real. His face went red, then redder, swelling like a balloon. His parents rushed over, panicked, shouting his name. Someone yelled to get ice. Someone else called for the shrine caretaker. Within minutes, they carried the boy away. His face was puffed up and blotchy, tears streaming down, his breath coming in short gasps. The crowd murmured. Someone said, "It happened again." I asked one of the stall owners what that meant. She avoided looking at me. "It's the lantern. The burned one." "What about it?" "They say it belonged to a woman from the war. She worked at a textile mill that caught fire one night. Her hair got caught in the machinery when she tried to run. They never found her whole body, only the part that burned." She adjusted the mask on her face, glancing toward the shrine. "Every year they hang that lantern by mistake. Every year someone forgets." I laughed nervously. "By mistake? How can you hang it if it's cursed?" She just shrugged. "It shows up. Someone finds it in storage and thinks it's from last year. By the time they notice, the festival's already started." A few hours later, most of the food stalls were closing. The music faded. That one lantern was still there, swaying gently in the dark. I walked closer, the air oddly still, the smell of charcoal and sake thick around me. From a distance, it looked like any other lantern. But when I got close enough to see the details, my stomach turned. The surface wasn't just soot-stained. It was streaked, like something had dripped down it, dark and uneven. And the bottom rim wasn't made of bamboo like the others. It was blackened metal. The light inside flickered, uneven, and then something shifted. At first, I thought it was the wind, but the paper moved upward, bulging slightly from within. I took a step back. Something thin slipped out through the bottom, like a string at first, then thicker. It swung side to side, brushing against the wood post. It was hair, long black hair. The lantern creaked as if something inside was swaying with the movement. The faint smell of burnt oil filled the air. I remember the sound next, a slow, wet dragging, like cloth shifting against itself. That's when I ran. The next morning I asked the old man again about it. He didn't pretend not to know what I was talking about. He said the first time that lantern appeared was decades ago, after the fire at the mill. The villagers found it floating downstream, burned but somehow intact, with strands of hair tangled around the handle. They buried it in the mountains, but the next year it was back, hanging in the festival storage shed. Every year, he said, we hang new ones. Every year that one shows up among them. You can tell by the soot, but by then, it's already lit. "What happens if you take it down?" I asked. He took a long sip of tea. "Someone always tries." That night, I heard shouting outside. A few men were gathered near the shrine, flashlights cutting through the darkness. I joined them, curious. One of them, drunk and angry, was yelling about stupid superstitions and trying to climb a ladder toward the burned lantern. "Don't!" someone shouted. "Wait until morning." But he didn't listen. He reached up and grabbed the frame. The moment his hand touched it, the light went out. The air went dead silent. Then something fell from the lantern. Not paper, not ash. A handful of long black hair still dripping wet. The man stumbled back, screaming. The others pulled him away. The next day, he was gone. They said he must have left the village during the night, but no one saw him at the train station. His truck was still parked near the shrine. And that lantern? It wasn't there either. A few nights later, as I was packing to leave, I glanced out the window of my guest room. The fields stretched out under a half moon, the sound of frogs echoing through the dark, and near the irrigation canal, swaying gently in the breeze, was a faint red glow. Just one lantern, hanging low, darker than the others. I didn't go look. I closed the window, turned off the light, and tried to sleep. But as I lay there, eyes half open, I swear I could smell smoke. And underneath it, the faint, unmistakable scent of burned hair.